Species 7, sea sponge. The scientific name is Porphyria. The background, the word Porphyria comes from the Latin word porus, which means port, and phyria, which means bear, meaning pore bearer. This is a reference to the numerous pores or holes on a sponge's surface. The following is Porphyria, kingdom Animalia, class Desmospongiae, order Dictoceratida, family Spongidae, and genus Spongia. Modes of nutrition and reproduction. Most sponges feed on bacteria and organic matter by drawing water in through pores called ostia. Most sponges also feed on small organisms that come in with the water. These are also a few species of carnivorous sponges that feed by using their speckles to capture the prey, such as small crustaceans. They are also photoautotrophs. Sponges reproduce both asexually and sexually. Sexual reproduction occurs through the production of egg and sperm. Fertilization occurs when the gametes are brought into the sponges by currents of water. A larva is formed and it settles by a substrate, where it becomes attached to the rest of its life. The asexual reproduction occurs by budding, which happens when a part of the sponge is broken off or one of its branch tips is constricted, and this small piece grows into a new sponge. And this right here is the life cycle of a sea sponge and how one is grown. Living conditions. My source, where I got it from, was the Atlanta Aquarium. They range from the marine to tropical polar water. Distribution, they are scattered throughout the world, found in oceans and freshwater lakes. The habitat. Sponges are found on the ocean floor or attached to substrates such as rocks, coral, shells, and marine organisms. Sponges range in habitat from shallow intertidal areas and coral reefs to the deep sea. The ecological role. They provide shelter for a variety of organisms, including shrimp, crabs, and algae. They are also a source of food for many sponge-eating fish species. Many sponge species form large colonies or aggregates of individual organisms. Species 8, Portobello mushroom. Scientific name, Agaricus bisporus. Background, the specific name bisporus refers to the fact that each of the Bacida have just 2 spores, and other Agaricus species have 4. The final, Basidomycota, kingdom fungi, class Agaricomycetes, order Agaricows, family Agaricaceae, and genus Agaries. Modes of nutrition and reproduction. This organism is a chemoheterotroph, which means there are microbes that use organic chemical substances as source of energy. They also break down organic matter from the soil to generate chemical energy. Mushrooms are zygotes, reproducing with spores rather than seeds, which are their gills. To reproduce sexually, 2 mycelial colonies must be near enough to join their hyphae and transfer the genetic material. As you can see right here, you can see the life cycle of a mushroom and how it goes from a seed to a germination from the stem and then into the formation. Living conditions. I found my source at Publix. They range from North America to Europe. The distribution is very random, but they can grow in clusters. Their habitat, they are found in shady or dark places, cool environment, and moist places. Ecological role. They help break down the decaying matter of organic matter. Also break down dead animals and plants, which they are known as decomposers.
On to species 9, whose common name is E. coli. The species name is Escherichia E. coli, which is derived from the genus Escherichia, and coli is the specific epithet that explains that it is related to bacteria normally inhabiting the intestine or colon. It is in kingdom Bacteria, phylum Protobacteria, class Gamma Protobacteria, order Enterobacterialis, family Enterobacteriaceae, and genus Escherichia. Some of the characteristics of this phylum is that they are gram-negative bacterium with an outer membrane composed primarily of lipopolysaccharides. E. coli are part of mutualistic relationships with the organisms that host them. Without E. coli, humans will be unable to absorb nutrients like vitamin K from their colon. Their absence will also limit organisms having urinary tract infections, neonatal meningitis, and intestinal diseases caused by E. coli. E. coli are chemoheterotrophs, which means they consume organic compounds for carbon and energy. And they reproduce via binary fission, which is an asexual form of reproduction, meaning that there is no involvement of eggs or sperm or the mixing of genetic material to form two individuals, except in cases of rare mutations or changes in DNA sequence where binary fission may produce daughter cells that are genetically identical to the mother cell. Overall, they reproduce by copying the chromosome and separating one cell into two. The primary habitat of them is the GI tract of humans and many other warm-blooded animals. Its ideal environmental components include 37 degrees Fahrenheit and neutral pH. It is adapted to have a flagella, which is a tail that increases its motility and helps it avoid environments of adverse conditions, which is called chemotaxis. And it can also adjust its porins to allow or deny certain nutrients in. The ecological niches of E. coli depend on nutrient availability within the intestines of the host organisms. Since there are so many different nutrients that can be found within the intestines, it is said that they contain a balanced ecosystem because there are so many different nutrient-defined niches where the E. coli colonize, which is dependent on the preferred nutrient of that particular population occupying the niche. The source was the bottom floor biology lab classroom, and its geographical range is everywhere, where they are distributed or dispersed in patterns that are clumped or clustered as defined by colonies. Its life cycle consists of its growing and beginning cell division, where there are two pole cells created, one new and one old. And with those cells, they also continue to divide more and more to reproduce a lot more of itself until they eventually die off.
Species 10, oyster. Scientific name, Ostriidae. Phylum, Mollusca. Ostriidae can be defined as a family of bivalve mollusks being attached by the lower valve. Unique characteristics. Oysters are animals with eyes all over their body. These creatures are known to hide in their shell upon sensing danger. The shells then close tightly to protect them. These animals do not have a central nervous system, therefore they cannot feel pain like humans. Classifications of an oyster. Kingdom, Animalia. Phylum, Mollusca. Class, Bivalvia. Order, Ostriodea. Family, Ostriidae. Genus, Crassostrea. Modes of nutrition and reproduction. Oysters are considered chemoautotrophs because they derive energy from the oxidation of inorganic compounds. Oysters can absorb carbon by calcification or the process of shell formation. This leads to the release and storage of carbon. They rely on the energy they derive from the egg because they don't develop feeding organs. Oysters are protandric, which means they change from male to female over their course of life. During this spawning season, a male releases his sperm and a female releases her eggs, and the larvae forms over 6 hours. This is a picture of the oyster life cycle. Source, range, and distribution. Source, I found the organism in the water at Myrtle Beach. Range, oysters live in salt waters from 8 to 35 feet deep. They can tolerate a wide range of temperatures also. Distribution, random. Habitat and ecological role. The range of eastern oysters extends from across the western Atlantic coast, from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico and south to Argentina. They are found both in intertidal and subtidal zones. Intertidal oysters tend to form clusters of elongated, irregularly shaped shells due to their exposure at low tides, while subtidal oysters tend to have larger, more rounded shells and tend not to cluster. Oysters are a keystone species because they provide architectural complexity that serves as essential habitat in which many other marine species find refuge for their young and also from predators. They also provide important ecosystem services. As filter feeders, they consume or filter out nitrogen-containing compounds and other particulate matter, including sediments, from the water. This increases water clarity, thereby enhancing the ability of seagrass to receive sunlight to photosynthesize. Finally, oysters are important prey in the diet of other invertebrates, fish, and humans. If removed from the ecosystem, many people would be out of jobs.